Justin, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I have to say, Eric, I feel like now I've had a string of guests as of late that when I look at their resumes, I just am floored. And you were one of those people. Like just looking at your resume, it's amazing the amount of work that you've done. I have to say, I'm super excited for our conversation today, and just want to give you kudos. You've done a lot.
Well, Justice, that just means I'm old.
I didn't say. I didn't say. Fantastic. Well, there's something we like to do here when we kick off, and that is this Cape U exercise. So it's one thing about your younger self, one thing you like about your culture, or something unique about me. I'll go ahead and start. The one that I'm going to talk about today is something about my younger self, and that is when I was growing up. My family moved to Oklahoma for a short time, and I got to be around my dad's side of the family. I'm mixed. My mom's white, my dad's black, and I got to move to Oklahoma where a lot of my family is actually from. And it was weird because at the time, I think I was about 14, 15 when I moved out there. But I had never, it was really where I started to be around football. And I remember going to family gatherings and watching Boomer Sooners, OU, play football. And I remember anytime the Boomers were losing, my uncle would have to go in the other room because otherwise he would have a heart attack. So I just remembered, and now that I'm much older, it's funny how those things come about because now whenever I watch football, I don't really have a southern accent, but when I'm watching football, that southern draw comes out quite a bit, and I think it's because of those family gatherings I had in Oklahoma watching football. Some of my fondest memories with my family out there. But that's one thing about my younger self, and now I'll pass it over to you, Eric.
Well, about my younger self,
Yeah.
probably, what people don't know is, well, I'm a native Californian. Grew up in Oakland, California,
Oh wow.
which is in and of itself is not that unique. But I ended up being a professional skier and
Whoa.
actually playing golf in college. So can you think about a young black kid in Oakland, California, in being the captain of the golf team and being a professional snow skier? So that's probably something that people don't know about my younger self.
That is absolutely great. I actually love snowboarding. It's one of my passions. There's actually a snowboard in my screen right here, but it's awesome. I did not know that about you. That's fantastic. But just goes to show you never know. But this is good jumping off point. I think when we talk about kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think there are a lot of assumptions people make, right? And there's kind of this mystique, and I think a lot of people feel like there's this fog over what it does. And from reading a little bit about you, looking at your resume, there's something I want to talk about, and that's that complexity that seems like this chess game that organizations are playing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can you speak to that and help kind of defog this term and what it means in corporate America for our listeners?
Sure. I mean, I have a different approach to D&I.
Yeah.
My career really was not just in the US, but it was a global career. So I traveled around the world doing business. So whether it was in Singapore, whether it was in the UK, Germany, Japan, etc. And so I came up with this phrase early on, global intellect.
Huh.
And the reason why I came up with global intellect, I remember having an assignment. Our CEO said we want to, expand our business into Europe. And so here in San Jose, the team and I, we drafted this, what we thought was an amazing international business plan.
Mhm.
So I got over to Scotland to launch it, and it was the worst business plan ever.
Oh no.
We had no idea how to do business in Europe.
Oh.
And so I spent 2 weeks there rewriting the plan, sent it back to my CEO, and he says, Eric, this isn't what we agreed to. I said, well, we had no idea what we were actually doing. And so it started me down this journey of global intellect and inclusiveness. And so I kind of came to the realization that if you know how to do business around the world, you know how to do business in Germany, which is going to be different than how you do business in Japan
Mhm.
or how you do business in Ghana. And so you start understanding the nuances between cultures, how they do business. And so you bring that back to DE&I.
Mhm.
If you understand the cultures that you're working with, you really understand the importance and the value of the different cultures, the different nuances, the different ways you look at business, the way you look at how you work with communities, etc. So, I talk about it in terms of global intellect,
Okay.
and you can drill that down to the city, you can drill that down to the state, because it all has the same premise in terms of understanding the positive of having a global thought leaders around the table. And if you think about this, there's enough studies out there today. McKinsey just came out with one saying that if you have global leaders and global thought leaders in your company, you may have anywhere north of 30% improvement in the productivity and the bottom line of your company.
Yeah.
So that's really when I think of DEI, I said just step back and bring it up to about 40,000 feet. And if you go over to Germany or you go over to Japan and you understand how they do business, and you bring that same thought process to the US, you're really going to have a good understanding of what DEI is all about and the importance of doing that.
That's fantastic. I think one of the things I want to make sure our listeners understand when you say global intellect, if you had to boil that down to a term that I could put on a t-shirt so someone can take this and be like, okay, I'm going to go to my boss and I'm going to tell him, hey, what we need is global intellect. What do they tell him?
I would say uniqueness of thought and an openness to be able to communicate.
I think that's such a good point. I think openness to communicate is something we don't talk about a lot. And I think you're right. I think the global aspect of diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that isn't talked about enough, because I think a lot of times we have a very US centric view of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, every country, like we're saying, has a unique set of characteristics they're dealing with historically, culturally, that they have to deal with. But I think sometimes we get so centralized in our thinking when it comes to us and being in America and the United States that we forget sometimes there are things that we can learn, right? Not everything we learn globally will be applicable, but that doesn't mean none of it will be. So I really, really like your concept here of global intellect.
Well, think about this. If you travel to Japan,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they have a certain way they do business, and you have to be able to adapt. I mean, I can remember when I went to Singapore, the first thing I realized I had to go karaoke singing because that was just part of the ritual in terms of doing business and getting to know you.
Yeah.
Now, none of us could sing, but
I was going to say I would be very intimidated by having to sing, especially for a business.
nobody could sing there. But that was just part of the process, really getting to know you outside of the business environment. You go to other cultures, they really want to know about your family. You go to Taiwan, they actually give you a nice porcelain gift to
Oh,
just
wow.
say, just respecting you when you come there. And think about that. And we typically will go with the empty hand because we don't understand the cultural
Yeah.
differences. And so you bring that back to, let's say, when I go visit my family in New Orleans, okay, I will insult them if I don't eat. And you may have to go to 3 or 4 houses and you have to still eat, so you're stuffed.
Yeah.
But okay, that's just part of the culture
Yeah.
and getting to know you. So I think it's so important to understand that. I can remember, going to a business meeting in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my colleagues, were having the meeting, and they ended up calling them the foreigner. I had to remind them, no, we're the foreigner. We're in Japan. Understanding, the mindset and how do you actually understand the different cultures and not just understand it, but appreciate